This leads now. The suspect in the Forest High School murder case has been granted bail of 5,000 rand. 19-year-old Mohammed Mawela faces 1 count of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. Among the conditions are that he must not enter the high school until the trial has been finalized.
The accused is ordered not to communicate with the state witnesses. The accused is not to enter the jurisdiction of Terfontein municipality area or suburb. The accused is ordered not to enter Forest High. The order that the accused is also prohibited from entering Forest High until his trial is finalized. The accused is ordered not to interfere with state witnesses, whether via school, media, physically or through family or relatives. The accused is ordered to surrender his passport, if he has any, to the investigating officer, Detective Ramasia, and he is ordered further not to leave the country before this trial is finalized. If there is a challenge for him to leave the country, the IO must be contacted, as the accused will not be having a passport. It will be with the IO if he has any. The accused is to sign at a known police station, which police station is known to the state, the IO, and the court.
Now, in reaction to that, ENCA's Lindo Kuhle is in the studio with us. He has been following this story since it broke a few days ago and was at the courthouse today. A very emotional day in court, even as we heard those findings being read out. More shocking, though, is that one of the victims we found out today, Lindo, who died outside Forest High School, had a pending case against him. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, certainly, the National Prosecuting Authority, in its reaction to what had happened in court, which is the granting of the bail for Mohammed Mawela, 5,000 rand, that is, we spoke to Sispindi Mjondongwane, who is the spokesperson, and what she said is that they had to consider a lot of things when they decided not to oppose, and one of the things that they considered was the fact that the victim in this case, who had passed on during that incident, is or has a pending case within that particular court, and that case is of armed robbery. But if you can just take a listen to Sispindi, what she said outside court.
I want to ask, why she give this boy the bail? Because she put 2 people killed there in the street. This one died. 2 chefs they play. Now you give her bail. Maybe let them to go out, can kill again these 2 left, Papa. Why you give her the bail? Maybe the kids is not bearing. You give her bail for what? Why she can continue to kill? Hey, Papa, my heart is painful.
Well, that's certainly not Sispindi, but those are the reactions, in fact, we saw outside court. The family members who were religiously attending this court case and had been calling for no bail for Mohammed Mawela, saying that they do not want him out and they feel that he is a threat to other people who will be, living with him should he be relocated to another school. But going back to the National Prosecuting Authority, what they said there was that there was a lot of things to consider, but they had to consider the facts, and that is why they did not oppose bail, which sparked those reactions. But if we can listen perhaps to that bite where Sispindi Mjondongwane just talks about what they had to consider to not oppose bail.
Okay, unfortunately, we don't seem to have that sound right now. But what I found quite interesting, Lindo, I did listen to some of the findings being read out by the magistrate. He very much took into consideration the background to this story. He was very much aware that he wasn't making this decision in a bubble. He kept referring to the community must please understand that according to the law, and he went through it very thoroughly, calling on people to understand the position that he is in. And I remember one quote stood out for me. He said, bail is not supposed to be punishment. We are not here to say whether this person is guilty or not guilty. But as we saw there from the reaction out of the courthouse, many people in that community still not happy with that decision.
Well, you are quite right when you say there was a lot of attention to detail, particularly on the evidence that was brought forward to the magistrate. In fact, last week, Thursday, after the bail hearing was concluded, he did say that he's not going to be rushed, he's not going to feel the pressure of the community or anyone else, but he is going to take his time and put all of these matters into consideration. And that is why he decided that the judgment will be brought forward today. But one of the things he also cited was the inconsistencies within the affidavits, both the defense as well as the prosecutors, particularly the investigating officer's affidavit, which did not quite go into details and challenging some of the things that were brought before court. But one of the things, going back to that information we got about the fact that there is a case of armed robbery for the victim, he says that, in fact, one of the allegations made by the defense, made by Mohammed Muela, that these boys belonged into a group, a gang calling themselves the Stoter Gender, says that wasn't challenged by the investigating officer, and that lots of things were inconsistent within those affidavits. And now he's saying that in fact, with what was brought forward to him, he had to then make a decision fit enough. But of course, the defense is also at a loss, because they had said that they want a bail of 500 rands because he's a scholar, which the magistrate said it's a 5,000 rand bail, because there was no evidence that was brought forward that as much as he is a scholar, what do his parents do, what can they afford. So he's saying that there was inconsistency in the evidence brought forward to him, but nonetheless he had to make a decision, and he did.
The safety of the accused was obviously also something that needed to be considered. He's now been told not to return to the school until the trial has been finalized. What are we hearing from law enforcement in terms of his safety being ensured, and what happens next? Well,
what came out also from that bail judgment was the fact that the magistrate said it clearly that the investigating officer, he puts it to him to protect where the address of where he will be relocated to, and also called upon the Department of Education to say actually they must provide or furnish him with the resources he needs to continue with his schooling activities. But they are trying to keep it a secret. They are trying to move him to a different location, but all of that needs to be protected by the investigating officer. And he said that the documents that were read out, particularly the affidavit of Mohammed Muela, who provided the address where he will be going to should he be granted bail, must be protected at all costs. So that it lies more particularly with the investigating officer to check on him all the time and to ensure that he is safe, but more so the Department of Education to provide him with all the necessities to continue with his schooling.
What happens next? Is the suspect expected to return to court at what time or what day?
The suspect is expected to return to court next month on the 10th. We understand that this is to allow further investigations and, of course, maybe try and fix all of those inconsistencies that the magistrate cited, but they will be investigating the matter further, look at all of the components, and then go back to see if they can begin with the trial on the 10th of next month.
And by the sounds of it, this story takes place against the background of a bigger issue at that school. So it'll be interesting to see what that investigation is able to bring up. Thank you so much, Lindo, for bringing us the very latest on that story that you've been covering for us for some time now. For more reaction on the story now, I'm joined by Steve Mabona, Gauteng Education spokesperson, for reaction on the story involving the 19-year-old learner who's been granted bail. He speaks to us from our Durban studio. Steve, thank you so much for joining us and for your availability as always. You're in Durban as we speak, but I assume you've heard the news that a 19-year-old Forest High school boy, Mohammed Muela, has been granted 5,000 rand bail. Your reaction from the Education Department?
Look, as the department, we acknowledge the bail by the justice system. As you will know, that we've been saying we will respect the justice system. Whatever outcome that would have been pronounced, we would have actually supported that. So for us is to make sure that we go back and look at what is it that the court said we must do as a department. All those elements must be covered. As you'll understand that it's examination time now, we are actually reminded to make sure that the learner, is taken through the process of writing examination. Actually, as I'm talking to you, the package is ready. We have, a schedule that is your timetable for the learner on when the learner will be writing. So we'll then have to interact. If he's out on bail, because we'll then make sure that we go to that venue, which it will be a secretive venue that we cannot reveal now, and just make sure that we facilitate the process. As for placing in another school, that we will also, work with the SGB, because remember, SGB must, give the learner a fair hearing, which means that they must take the learner through the process of hearing. If they decide to expel, then we will be in a position to find an alternative school that the learner will be placed at.
As we find out more about this specific incident, it seems to be taking place against the backdrop of a bigger issue at Forest High, as you and the MEC were able to talk about when you first arrived on the scene, that there are issues around gangsterism and drug dealing at Forest High School that is actually a bigger issue. Today we found out that one of the victims who died in this incident had a pending case against him as well. Are you hopeful that a case like this or a story like this can help you perhaps get to the source of a bigger issue at a school like Forest High?
Hence, we will put an emphasis to parents that when we say work with us, we mean make sure that you understand the children, you understand the learner that you are sending to us. Because if you were to ask parents and say, this is what is happening, or are you aware? Probably they might not be aware that a learner might have been engaged in some, criminal activity or has been pursued for another case. Or they will say, no, not our children. So it's important for parents to always work with us, always be ready to take, any negative, news, against your children, so that we can then move forward and assist you to make sure that the learner is ready to be in the classroom, because if we don't work with parents, then we are doomed. So hence we call upon parents where there's an element of a learner not doing well in class, and we are informed that probably one is engaged in gangsterism, then we should be in a position to pursue that. The code of conduct of our schools squarely lies on the shoulders of the SGB. SGB represent parents, so we cannot not work with the parents, no SGB. So those are the elements that we actually interact with in our schooling environment, and we will continue to seek support, from all other sectors, our sister departments, social development, and all others that are in our space.
I'm happy that you've mentioned that, because it does seem that the multidisciplinary approach is very much needed. Today we're focusing on gangsterism in various hotspots across the country here on ENCA, and today with regards to this Forest High School story, we've heard about a gang that goes by the name of Stoute Kinders Gang. Now, if they've got a name and they've given themselves a name like that, it means that they're quite organized and, for all intents and purposes, are using this school specifically, as the platform upon which to spread its network and to go about the deeds that they do as a gang. How are you approaching this? If you are seeking to work alongside other departments, is there a need, or is there already a plan of action to try and look specifically at the scourge of gangsterism in high schools like Forest High?
No, we've already started with the process. I mean, as soon as we received the name, which it's known to us now, we then had to go back to school to say, let's find a way of understanding who are those learners that are participating in this gang, so that we can then explore avenues on how we're going to interact with them. If there's no case, in point that we are looking at now, we'll be in a position to say, what are the other things that these learners are doing? Because honestly, when you look at the school itself, we have not received major complaints or many complaints as far as your violence is concerned in that specific school. So you will hasten to go there and say there's a gangsterism. Meanwhile, we don't even have, cases that were reported to you. So as soon as we had this and we know the name of the gang, then we should be in a position to, interact with those that they are known, so that we understand on what is it they're doing, besides them being at school? Is there anything that they are doing outside school? Because we understand that this fight started outside the school on a Friday.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Steve Mabona, Gauteng Education spokesperson, thank you so much for giving us of your time, speaking to us live from our studio in Durban.